In this video, we're going to talk about volume and how to calculate it. Now, what volume is, it's the amount of space inside a three-dimensional shape. So the best way I like to think about it is if you have a container, right, and you fill up that container with water, right, you start filling it up, you start filling it up more, you start filling it up more. The amount of water that fits inside that container is the volume. We measure the volume. Some measurements you might see are like milliliters and liters, like when you're actually measuring something. And what these really are, these are units cubed. So for example, a milliliter is the same thing as a centimeter cubed. A liter is something called a decimeter cubed. So whenever we find the volume of something, the units at the end are always the unit that we use for the side lengths cubed. Okay? So how do we find the volume inside a shape? Well, it depends on the shape. Each shape has their own formula for finding a volume. And you should have your handy dandy formula sheet with you, which tells you the equation for each of them. Now, these shapes, most of them have more than one formula. So I'm going to actually show you, I'm going to highlight which ones I think are the simplest ones for you to use for each shape. So for the cylinder, this is the easiest one. For the sphere, this is the easiest one. If you want to use the other one, you can, but I'm just showing you these ones are probably the easiest. These are the ones we'll be using in this video. For the cone, this one's the easiest one. For the square-based pyramid, I like this one the best. It's usually the first one. This one's good, other than the one that's area of base times height. Let's not worry about the ones with area of base yet. We'll come back to that later in the course, why there's also another way to calculate them all with area of base. But those, I believe, are the simplest ones for you to calculate volume with. So let's do an example. Can we find the volume of the shape? Well, first we need to identify the shape. Which one is it? Well, all the way down at the bottom here, it looks like a triangular prism, right? Because it's got this shape, the triangle, and the sides are rectangles. See that? So the sides of any prism are going to be rectangles. So this is a triangular prism, and we can just copy down the equation for that. V equals BLH over 2. So that's always a good first step, is to copy down that formula. Now, what is B, L, and H? Well, the diagram shows us what B, L, and H are. This one's a little bit confusing. It looks a little bit different than this, but the B is the base of the triangle. L looks like it's sort of the height of that triangle. And H looks like it's the height of the rectangle. So on this, we would say that this is the B, right? This is the L, and this is the H. So we can just substitute all those numbers into our equation. So our V, another way to put it, is going to be B, which is 6, times L, which is 5, times H, which is 12, all divided by 2. And if we calculate that, it should come out to 180. And then what are our units? Well, our units that were given in the question, our lengths, were centimeters, right? And what we ended up doing is we did centimeters times centimeters times centimeters. So we should end up with a final unit of centimeters cubed, or centimeters to the power of 3. So that's how many cubic centimeters can fit in that shape, or milliliters. Milliliter is actually the same thing. So if we built that shape, we would be able to fit 180 milliliters or centimeters cubed into it. So what I want you to do now is I want you to try this question, which is a very similar question, the your turn question. Pause the video here, try it, unpause when you have an answer, and you can compare it to my answer. So the answer that I got for this one is 1,072.5 feet cubed. There you go. So I want you to try all 4 of these questions down here. The answers are at the bottom of the page, so make sure you're checking as you're going. So I want you to pause the video and try them. When you got all the answers, unpause it and you can see the solutions. But make sure you really try the questions first before unpausing. So question A, the answer is 60 centimeters cubed. If you're having trouble with that, maybe it's because you couldn't identify the shape. That is a rectangular prism. The second shape is a square-based pyramid. You can tell it's a pyramid because it comes to a point at the top. And the answer is 192 centimeters cubed. Now, if you got the wrong answer, it could be because you forgot to square the base or you squared the wrong one. Remember what squared means? It means multiply by itself. So another way of writing this would be, instead of 8 squared times 9 over 3, you could do 8 times 8, that's 8 squared, right? Times 9 over 3. That's just another way of writing this expression. It should give you the same answer. But if your calculator has a squared button, you could use that as well. This next one is a triangular prism because it's got a triangle, right, at the base. It's got a triangle here. And the other thing about a prism, to identify it as a prism, is you realize there's another of that same shape repeated on the other side. So that's how you can tell it's a prism instead of a pyramid. Though it does sort of have a pointy top, for a pyramid, they all have to come to the same point. See that? So it looks a little bit different than the one over here, but you just have to realize that the length, or the L, is just going to be this height of the triangle. So it looks a little bit different, but it's the same calculation. And this last one is a cone. So the formula has pi r squared h divided by 3. So remember, pi is 3.14. Then we have to be careful to square our radius. And our radius here was 3, right? That's our radius. And this is our height. So make sure to do that, and then times 8, and then divided by 3. And remember, what 3 squared means is 3 times 3. So another way to write this could have been 3.14 times 3 times 3 times 8 divided by 3. Okay, but that should be the answer, 75.36 centimeters squared. So now it's your turn to try all of these questions on the page. I'm going to give you a hint for M and N. If you're stuck on M and N, they look funny because you don't see the shape on your formula sheet. But what shape are they? Well, they're actually half a sphere. And this actually has a name, which you may have heard before, called a hemisphere. Now you'll notice that that shape isn't on your formula sheet, right? There's no hemisphere on your formula sheet. But what is on your formula sheet is the equation for the volume of a sphere, 4 pi r cubed divided by 3. So how is that going to be related to this shape? Well, remember, we can sort of pretend it's half a sphere, right? So there's like another half of a sphere that you don't see here. So what you could do, maybe try solving for or finding the volume of a whole sphere, and then do something with that to try to find the volume of half of the sphere. And make sure, again, with all these questions, you check your answers at the bottom as you go. Good luck.